It was all your fault! The Generation 8 fossil Pokemon are very controversial to say the least, and while their janky designs are obviously attributed to some very interesting history, we all know that when it comes to the actual world of Pokemon, it was all her fault. As we're continuing on with videos for Fossil Frontier, I figured why not take a look back at the Generation 8 fossil Pokemon, and specifically discuss the character who ruined everything. Well, okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but fossil Pokemon were always a very interesting implementation, being prehistoric creatures that were revived from fossils that we would find just anywhere, thus going from item to Pokemon, a very fun and fan-favorite idea throughout the franchise. So when Pokemon Sword and Shield came around, people were wondering what the fossil Pokemon of this generation could possibly look like. Then boy were we surprised. Rather than there being 2 Pokemon each introduced with an evolution, this time we got 4 Pokemon that seem to mix and match some of the same parts. And that is obviously the entire gimmick. These Pokemon are not made up of a single fossil, but instead combine 2 different ones into these things. In an older Pokemon games, the mechanic of fossils were very interesting in that you would normally pick up the fossils at some point in your journey, and then eventually when you make it to a research facility or museum, you would be able to revive them into Pokemon. The very last one being Generation 7, which was a little different, in that you could get your fossils revived by this guy who was attempting to build a Jurassic Park reference. Obviously there's no full facility going on here, however in Pokemon Sun and Moon we gave him the benefit of the doubt, hoping that in a sequel or something else we would see the park completed. That never did happen, but at least this guy presented himself as a fossil expert. Now in Generation 8, the person who helps us revive fossils is literally Cara Liss. No, yeah, that's her name, Cara Liss. She is a lone woman standing on Route 6 of the Galar region with a funky looking machine next to her. Then if it wasn't obvious, this was her fossil restoration device, which looks very homemade. Man, and her design is even really funny. She's got the goofy hair, the weird little eyes, and even her shoes are mismatched, all of them contributing to the gimmick of the fossil Pokemon this generation. So yeah, if we bring her 2 different pieces of fossils, she'll revive them into one of the monstrosities here. And you know, for a moment, I'm just gonna be honest here, I like the idea, I like the gimmick, the Pokemon themselves are really funny, and I find it to be a relatively acceptable presentation so long as we get some regular fossil Pokemon later on, but needless to say, not everybody feels the same way. And you know, I really honestly think that the concept could have worked had Cara Liss not been the way she is. The whole concept of the mix and match fossil Pokemon are inspired by real life events. Back when people were first digging up fossils and putting the bones together in any way they could, trying to rationalize what sort of creatures these came from, they ended up just doing whatever they wanted and made just the most horrendous looking things possible. And on top of that, looking back, we apparently call these the Bone Wars, because different groups of people were trying their best to dig up fossils, get them in the museums, get the popularity, even sabotaging each other along the way, so all of that scientific recklessness and mix and matching of the fossils is represented by these Pokemon. So how advanced a lot of the technology in Pokemon was before, the way that they decided to rationalize this was by having somebody who seems so far removed from anything we knew before be the one to help us revive the fossil Pokemon, literally just being some nobody in the middle of a desert with a janky little machine. In reality, I think it still would have been really cool to get the Galarian Fossil Pokemon as we did, but maybe actually include larger groups of people who were definitively against each other and wanted you to come to them to revive their fossils. Maybe there could have even been 2 different facilities, each of which only revives half of the fossils. You know, give them more resources and make it a lot more exciting than just somebody standing in the desert, while also doubling down on the inspiration. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the video, and if you want to continue showing your support, there are actually some brand new designs over on the merch store. These are some that I made for Fossil Frontier. Obviously, there's the main logo on a shirt and a hoodie, or you can check out the Cretaceous Garden design that's also on a shirt and hoodie. If you think these are cool and you want to help me out, you can head on over to gatorx-shop.fourthwall.com, and if you're a channel member, I will be dropping a promo code over on the Discord server or the community tab that will give you 10% off your entire order, and it works on the old designs as well if you want to pick those up. Anyway, the promo's over, let's go and get back to the video. Now, over in the anime, Cara Liss actually did appear there, being a voice character with a role for 1 episode, and she actually had an anime exclusive rival, named Brazen in English. That whole adventure is actually kind of funny, being episode 50 of Pokemon Journeys, a pinch of this, a pinch of that, as Ash and Go are investigating some of the rare fossils of the Galar region. So both Cara Liss and Brazen present their theories for some of the fossils that they found, using little representations to present the Pokemon that they theorize these could be from. Cara Liss theorizes that the 2 fossil pieces she has could be reconstructed into Arctovish, and Brazen theorizes that his pieces can be reconstructed into Dracozolt. Funny enough, both of these designs seem like they could make the most sense, at least when you're dealing with only the fossils and not the whole skin and colors of it. But in the episode, they actually get their pieces mixed up, and so when they actually revive their Pokemon, they end up as Arctozolt and Dracovish. And as you know, Dracovish is the most egregious of these, even though it actually is probably the favorite of the bunch, just because of the history it's had since then. But even though this episode does still have just some random people in the middle of a desert with a funny little machine, I think it does the idea a little better than we see in the video games. And as we know, Dracovish would become a favorite Pokemon just because of how good it actually is. I mean, this thing is a dragon and water type, one of the best type combinations. It has some relatively solid stats and a very good signature move. In the anime, this was also actually the first fossil Pokemon that Ash got to own, and throughout the course of the series would become one of his MVPs. So now that all 4 of them have had their time, hopefully we can just enjoy them as a fun little one-off thing they did for fossil Pokemon. Then it would have felt a little better if we got some fossil Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, or if any of the previous ones were available there besides the Sinnoh ones, but I've really come to love these goofy designs. And while it is a fun idea to think about what these would have looked like if they had been complete, I really do just keep thinking about that scene in the anime episode where we were always just operating with incomplete information. So these people were doing the best they can, which maybe to some might not have been enough. But you know, I honestly can't believe just how much Cara Liss was featured in the Pokemon franchise. Again, compared to some of the other fossil experts that we saw in other games. Maybe not even necessarily fossil experts, but just the NPCs that would be the ones to help us revive fossils, because even in the base Sword and Shield, Cara Liss has a unique model. Then like I said, there is also the anime appearance, but they even remembered to put her in the manga. And on top of that, she has a full art illustration card. And yes, I know that Pokemon will do this for some NPCs as well, but once again, just the fact that she is a named character. Dude, I did not realize, but this artwork was actually drawn by Hitoshi Ariga. That's actually crazy. If you don't know, this is one of my favorite Pokemon artists who does some great work for the TCG as well as some Pokemon designs, being the one who designed Tyrantrum and Aurorus. So weirdly enough, being the one NPC that everybody can put some blame on for the appearance of the fossil Pokemon, she actually has a lot more recognition than your usual Pokemon NPC. The more that I think about it, and the more that I look back on Pokemon Sword and Shield in general, realizing just how goofy a lot of the other elements are, I've come to understand Cara Liss and the Galarian Fossil Pokemon a bit more. I still do have a soft spot for Dracovish, and a good amount of people really do like him. Thank you, Mr. Fish. But while I was able to get some enjoyment out of the fossil Pokemon in Generation 8, all I really had to say to Cara Liss is to never cook again, please don't. So that was it for this little discussion about the Galarian Fossil Pokemon. Obviously I've done videos on them before, but now that we've had the character of Cara Liss appear in other parts of the Pokemon world, it was really interesting to see just how much she's been developed or doubled down on in terms of the concept, weirdly enough making her one of the most well-known characters related to fossil Pokemon. So you know, maybe she did a fine job being the weird and funny character that she was always meant to be. But let me know what you think in the comments below about Cara Liss and all of the Galarian Fossil Pokemon. Though maybe try to be nice, I read all of the comments that you were leaving on the poll earlier this week. But if you at least enjoyed watching me share some of my opinions, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hype up the video as well. And I hope you had a fun time in July as we got to explore Fossil Frontier. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, including the Great Gators, Cemetery Hill, Cosmo Zero, Shiny Swints, Star Shooter, Koi Koi 13, Cheez-It 62, Gator Kid 509, TF, Mathaclock947, Taijirai, and Quago. If you would like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes for comments, live streams, sometimes early videos, and our members-only Discord server, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well for more memes. Anyway, this is Gatorex, and I will catch you all later.
Here they come! Witness the grace and majesty in the Pokemon trading card game, Sword and Shield. Each booster pack of 10 cards sold separately. Cards vary by pack.